Hi, my name is Gina and I am very ready to be done with this palette. Alright, so today we are doing 10 looks with one palette, which is this guy here, the Morphe 35M Boss Mood. This is a very large palette, and so in order to give it like its full go, its full chance, I decided to do 10 looks with it instead of what I would ordinarily do, which is 3. Over the course of the last several weeks, I have been using this, some in my day-to-day routine, some in like crazy artistry-based work like this, to give it like a full turn. As you can see, it's pretty messy. This here is look number 9, and look 10 will be the recreation of what I did in my first impressions, which, as I mentioned in that video, the smoky eye didn't go the way that I wanted it to, and I wasn't sure if that was because of the shadows or just because of poor application on my part. So that will be towards the end of the video as well. The other thing I will also say is that this is the first time I've done a video over the course of several days and several weeks. So my lighting will change, my camera work will slowly get better, I hope, and you should expect like a lot of like differences in formatting and all of that stuff as you move through the video. Just be prepared for it, and hopefully the next time I do something like this, it will be a little bit more consistent. But this one is our first one, so it's gonna be a little rough, and that's okay. All of that said, let's go ahead and get started with look number 1. All right, we are starting out with my eyes primed with my Smashbox 24-hour primer and with some Tarte Shape Tape on top. You see me here applying Stroke of Luck, and as you can see as I'm blending it, I'm getting these weird dark patches. I'm actually not applying a different color to get that dark line and those dark patches. That's just me blending the eyeshadow. But after that, I went in with Green with Envy to deepen it up, and to blend it all out, I added Hello Sunshine at the top there. Next, I put down some glitter glue on my lid, and I put down Bright Eyes on top of that. After that, I went in with Electric Energy as a way to kind of feather it out. And then I put on top of Bright Eyes Pop Star to kind of give it a little bit more texture, which I didn't really like. After that, I did some just adjustments to the look where I deepened up the outer corner again with Green with Envy, blended out the top edge a bit more, and then shored up the cut crease. I use Bright Eyes and Play It Cool on the lower lash line, and then on the outer part of it, I used Green with Envy. For the inner corner, I went in with Light of the Party, and for the last bit of it, I added some glitter and a dark burgundy lipstick. For look number 2, I used the P. Louise base in white this time. I was kind of hoping that it would help things blend out a bit better. As you can see, I still had some weird catching, but I went in with Fired Up. At first, that was that orange color, and it took a really long time to build up as well. I tended to go in with Sweet Beets, which was like a light burgundy color, but I could not get it to come up out of the pan, so I eventually went in with a palette knife to dig some of it up. You can see me gesturing there that the shadow isn't really sticking very well, and it's still doing that catching in the outer corner. I ended up giving up on it and moved to do my lid shade, which was Confidence. And I don't remember if this is wet or dry, but I do know that the Morphe shadows universally performed better when wet. I followed that up with Bright Eyes, and then did the rest of my face makeup. For the inner corner, I used Bright Eyes and Pop Star together to get something really intense and yellow, and added a little bit of Chartreuse from JD Glow. For the lower lash line, I started with Play It Cool and then added Nude Tude on top and put the whole thing together with a bright red lipstick. For look 3, I really had been wanting for the whole palette to do something purple and green, so primed just with my Smashbox primer, I went in with Transformer all in the crease area and then topped it with Power Slayer to blend it out. After Power Slayer was blended through, I added Stroke of Luck on the tippy top of it to fade it a little bit better into my skin. After I cut my crease with the ColourPop concealer, I added Bold Moves on top. I was feeling like it was a lot duller than I was expecting, so I added a pigment from Sigil Inspired called Keeper of the Green Flame on top of it. I enforced the outer corner with Transformer a bit more and then used Bold Moves to transition the two. For the lower lash line, I didn't do anything super special. I just repeated Transformer as well as Stroke of Luck and Power Slayer to blend it out. For the inner corner, I started with Bold Moves and then put on Grape Expectations and Daredevil to get something really intense and warm purple. Look 4, I primed with the Smashbox primer and the ColourPop concealer, and I started out with Peachy Keen. This took forever to blend out, and then with Talk Dirty to deepen it up some, and then blended it out again with Peachy Keen, and went back into Talk Dirty to deepen up the outer corner. I also added the darker brown to the inner corner as well because we went with a halo eye. For the lid shimmer on this, I went with the Sheen Stealer, which turned out to be one of my favorite shades in the palette. It's got a really cool like glitter in it that's not too obnoxious, but it adds a really good texture and a really good depth of color into it, which I thought was really neat. After I applied that, I went in with our darker shade Talk Dirty to deepen everything up and get it in order. It looks like I forgot to record the lower lash line. My bad. I just used the same shades that I did on the top. For the inner corner on this look, I used Hot Stuff, which I just blew out everywhere, which gave it this really cool bronze metallic look. For look 5, I primed with my Smashbox primer, as I always do, with the P. Louise base. For this look, I wanted to mix my Morphe palette with other shadows that I own to see how they played well together. I started off with Center of Attention deep down on my lid. Then I used a deep warm blue from one of my singles to blend that out. And going back on top of the lid, I used a purple glittery pigment from Sigil Inspired. For the lower lash line, I used the same blue that I did on top and did that first layer before going in with a pencil brush and packing on Center of Attention. For the inner corner, I decided to go opposite and used Bright Eyes from the Morphe palette, and then I used Orange Emperor, which is from Touch of Glam Beauty, and Cleopatra's Crown, also from Touch of Glam Beauty. And then around look 6 is when I got a little bored. I started out with my regular primer and Tarte Shape Tape. On one side, I used Red Carpet, Fired Up, and Candy Crush to do blending in the crease, and then used Power Slayer to deepen it up. On the other side, I built a green crease with Stroke of Luck, Express Yourself, and Green with Envy. Off camera, I put down some colored bases to help with color payoff, but as you can see on the side with the green crease, it didn't quite go as planned. On the side with the red crease, I pulled down Bold Moves, Pop Star, and then deepened up the outer corner with Green with Envy. Then on the side with the green crease, I laid down Bright Eyes, Confidence. Then on the outer corner, I used Sparks Fly. To mask that line and deepen the crease a bit more, I used Black Magic on both sides. On the lower lash line, I used the same color story as what was on the lid. So for the side with the red crease, I used Stroke of Luck and Green with Envy. On the green crease side, I used Bold Moves and Pop Star. After that, I used a mixing medium with Pop Star to make a liner because this look just wasn't extra enough for me. And then on the other side, I did the same thing with Bright Eyes. Part of this look had to be a little bit simpler, and so I only used Light of the Night in the inner corner. For look 7, you can see that on my left eye, there's still some staining from the base from the previous day, so I put down some P. Louise base in white to try and cover that up. After the previous day's really intense look, I went for something a lot simpler, and I just used Transformer in the outer corner, then Power Slayer, Candy Crush, FOTD, Red Carpet, and Fired Up to create a smooth gradient of purple to red on my lid. On the lower lash, I did the exact same thing, and then on the inner corner, I used Stroke of Luck to keep everything nice and matte. For look 8, I just used my Smashbox primer and went into the crease with Green with Envy, and then used Stroke of Luck and Hello Sunshine to blend it out into my skin. I wasn't done cutting my crease with glitter glue, so I gave this another try, and then put on top of that Indie Glow Queen, Grape Expectations, Hot Stuff, and then deepened everything up again with Transformer in the outer corner. I will say that for the Morphe shimmers, they do work much better when they have a base of some kind to stick on, like a glitter glue. For the lower lash line, I used Peachy Keen and then Fired Up to get a nice blown out matte look. And in the inner corner, I used JD Glow's 365 to get something with a little bit more oomph. One of the things that I learned as I was doing this is that a lot of these shadows don't have the vibrancy that the promotional pictures would suggest, or even with the way that they look in the pan. Even when I put down a white base, and even when I put down a concealer base, they just ended up looking dull after a while. For look 9, we're here for another ridiculous look. I used my Smashbox primer and Makeup Revolution's Cut Crease Canvas. I actually had a botched filming of this, which is why there's already orange all over my face. For the crease work, I wanted to test the blending group that is in this palette, so that top row of greens. So I went in directly with Stroke of Luck, then Express Yourself, then Nude and Green with Envy to create a nice green gradient. On the lid, we are doing a negative space cut crease, so you'll see me build up a wing on the bottom here with Red Carpet, Fired Up, and then topped it off with a yellow Pop Star. Then I did a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't film because the palette is all we care about here, but it includes a great deal of glitter. For the lower lash, I used Grape Expectations, Daredevil, and Center of Attention. Still not done with the JD Glow shadows, I used Limelight in the inner corner. This was interesting. I think it's one that I would attempt in a different way next time. Then for look 10, we are here to recreate what I did in my first impressions video. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. One of the things that I learned when working with this palette is that it is best to work from dark to light. So after I was primed with my Smashbox primer and had a layer of Shape Tape down, I went in with Transformer, that dark purple, just patting it straight on, and being very careful to bring it above the fold of my hood. After that, I blended it out with FOTD and blended that out with Fired Up, and on the very outer corner near my brow bone, I added Stroke of Luck. After that, I went in to build the colors back up and make sure that the blend was smooth. On the lower lash line, I used Stroke of Luck, then Express Yourself, and Green with Envy, And similarly to my first look, I went for that fishtail shape where it has a bit of a triangle. For the inner corner, I think one of the things that I learned is that I really love JD Glow shadows and they go really well with this palette. So I used Bestie, Limelight, and Chartreuse to get a lot of drama in that inner corner. I did absolutely end up loving this look, and I felt satisfied that the problems that I had with my first impressions were mistakes in application rather than problems with the palette itself. That said, I do have a lot of problems with the palette itself, and now we're going to cut back to me talking in real time to give you my final thoughts. So this guy, let me cover up this one so you're not being blinded. My feelings on this are really, really mixed. I love the color story. I think that that is something that we've been talking about for several weeks, and I can't sit here and tell you that I don't love the colors in this palette. I love the mix of reds, the cool reds, the oranges, the purples, the greens. I love them. Even the browns have a kind of magic to them. In the brown look that we did, we discovered like this shade here has some like micro glitter in it. In general, like the color selection, the color story, I really like. I'm gonna actually flip it. I fucking hate these palettes. The mattes in general, I would say writ large, I like the mattes. I do think that they are, I think for the most part they work. I think some of the brighter shades here do dull down over time, and I do think that at least in the beginning, it takes a lot to dig into the pan. Just feeling the screen, I have a slight dip in it already, and while I did like it and did use it a lot, it's a little bit disheartening to know that I have to use that much product to do what I want with it, such that it has a dip in it in less than a month. It actually might be about a month. The shimmers, I don't like them. They lack depth, they lack texture. Some of the colors are really cool like this. I don't have anything like a lot of these in my collection. I sincerely doubt I will keep any of them, but we'll see. We're gonna do like a whole, when I go to depot it, we'll do like a whole evaluation. But some of the mattes, like this olive, this dark olive, this dark purple, and even the black are honestly really good. And like this red here, these two reds are really good, even if they're barely distinguishable. This matte orange, really, really good. I have a feeling that I will want to keep a lot of these mattes if I don't have color dupes for them. That said, I do think that for most of these, I will keep them, but I'm not going to necessarily consider the color that they have to be off of my list when I buy new things, just because I know that even if I think this formula is okay, I do know that there are better ones out there, and all I need to do is wait for them to produce those colors. So for example, if I find that any of these are dupes for any of the Sydney Grace ones that I just picked up, or any of the Cleona that are on the way, I probably won't keep the Morphe one. Do I recommend people pick up this palette? Oh wait, before I go into that, the last thing I would say in terms of this palette, and I've mentioned it several times before, is that in terms of tint, in terms of variation of tint, this has very, very little. I think that the promotional pictures kind of, I wouldn't say that they necessarily tweaked certain shades, but maybe the saturation is bumped to the point where it looks like there's a lot more variation in brightness than there actually is, when in reality this is very flat, and it's also very dark. I think that for fall, and this is very clearly a fall palette, I think it released for fall last year, this is very clearly meant for that season. The colors are in that family, they're very warm, but for a fall palette, you still need a mix of bright and dark, and you really need a lot more richness than this has. Some of the standout shades like the orange, the reds, the greens, they have some of that, but like the shimmers are all really dull. Like some of these mattes are just dull colors. They're kind of fillers. And I feel like this, like if you could take the promotional pictures of this and like bump the saturation of this palette, it would be a lot better and a lot more suited in terms of color story. And like if these were brighter, they don't have to be neons. They don't have to be like chartreuse. Well, actually I think a chartreuse would be very welcome, like a metallic chartreuse, like the JD Glow. Actually, things in this color story that are brighter would be much welcome. Like I would sub this gold for this one. I would sub this metallic orange for this one, even though it's a bit more red. And I certainly would have a shimmer chartreuse in this palette. And holding up this chartreuse, I think, does very well demonstrate what I'm talking about in terms of just color saturation being lacking. And that's something that I found myself repeatedly disappointed with as I worked with this. Would I recommend this palette? Honestly, probably not. There are other palettes out there in the world with a similar color story that are smaller and more curated, with shadows that are more saturated, better pigmented, etc., that I think you can probably get and would be happier with. I will say I do applaud Morphe for representing a wider range of colors while still sticking true to what I would call blending families, right? I think that for beginners in particular, blending families are really nice. And I did find this gradation of green to be really helpful in that. But for me, I don't need it. It's not a thing that I need. And for beginners, there are better formulas out there, if that makes sense. If you're a fan of the Morphe formula, if you like working with them, the only drawback I have is that this is dark and lacks depth. But for me, even though I want to keep some of them because the colors are unique and unique to my collection, I'm not sure if I would say run out and buy this if you're looking for a fall palette for this year. I think overall I'd give this palette like a C+. No, I'd say it's like a solid C. It's got good things about it, but it's just not, it's not all the way there, not for me at least. Even though I do think this represents an important deviation from Morphe's typical formula of different shades of brown, and I do appreciate that. I think that is all I have to say on this palette at the moment. I'm sure we will go into more detail on each individual shades when I do the assessment for depotting and what I'm going to keep and what I'm not. So if you're interested in a more detailed breakdown, be sure to check out that video. It'll be up soon. I hope you liked this video, found it helpful, found all of the looks with this 35 pan palette to be useful. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up and just leave me a comment down below. It helps me out a bunch, and I honestly legitimately love to hear people's opinions, particularly on things like Morphe palettes. If you like me and my flowing red hair, please do subscribe to the channel. I upload on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, at least for the foreseeable future. You can find me on the internet at Faces by Gina. I have a Facebook and an Instagram on that name where I upload every day. I hope that you're having a great day no matter where you are, and please do remember to think deeply, critically engage the world around you as you're being good to yourself and good to others, and hopefully not as sick as that guy. I will see you out there on the internet. I will see you out there on the internet.